Amazing. So we have about 20-ish minutes. And my intention is to just give everyone a sense of the program and what to expect. And also like what are the intentions behind it? Why am I offering this now? Um, really with the hope that it just gives you the information to like feel in your own body, like, is this the right time? Is this the right fit for me? So I just invite you to like listen with your mind, but also like let your whole self arrive. Um, I find that that's what really helps me decide. Because what I will say about this program is, and I'm sure anyone who's ever been on a retreat or in a circle with others or any kind of small group setting is like, there are the things that we know, and then there's the magic that happens when you bring people together. So I'm going to tell you all about the program today, but I'm also going to acknowledge that like there is magic when you bring humans together. And that magic we can't anticipate. It's just going to happen on its own. And so there's always going to be some unknowns in these spaces. And that's what makes it special. It's what builds our trust together as a group. It's what helps us grow. But it's also an unknown. So I just want to like name that as part of this too. So I'm going to cover a little bit about who I am, my intentions for the program, some of the influences and lineages that I'm drawing from to shape this experience. And then I'll walk you through like what the actual program will look like, so that you have a sense of like what is the actual experience going to feel like? What does it look like on your calendar? And then I'll talk a little bit about next steps, and if there are any questions at the end, I will stay on a little bit extra for Q&A too, to make sure we get everyone taken care of. Yeah, okay. So I'm just going to dive in, and feel free to drop questions in the chat as I go. But I do want to make sure I just get all this information to everyone who'll be listening. So if we haven't met yet, I'm Rebecca McGee. I'm the founder of Sister Seasons. And since 2020, I have been guiding women and menstruators who care about the future of our planet in reconnecting to the cycles of their body and the natural world in support of both their personal well-being, but also this like desire and longing to support our collective well-being. So both that of our communities and our planet. I'm a teacher, a facilitator, a space holder, a writer, a systems thinker, and someone who just absolutely loves to learn and then share what I've learned. And so that is why a lot of this is coming from many diverse fields as well. I'm also just a human learning how to like move at the pace of my body. And so I always like to just like name that I am also in this with you all. I'm also figuring this out. And so I'm happy to share what I've been learning, but I also really love making space for our collective wisdom to come in as well. So in terms of like what my background has been though professionally, if that helps kind of set the context for this, I spent 15 years working in social impact, philanthropy, and environmental sustainability, both in the nonprofit and the for-profit sectors. Most recently, before Sister Season started, I was working for Eileen Fisher on their social consciousness team. So doing a lot of employee engagement, managing their philanthropic portfolio of women's issues and environmental issues, and working with a lot of like women business owners. So all the things. And then alongside of that, I've been studying the body for a long time. It really started just for my own, well-being, like really trying to just support my own healing. And then it started to fuse and weave into the work that I was doing around environmental issues. And so Some of that study has been, through my yoga teacher training, really digging into anatomy and physiology, but also menstrual cycles, nervous system, and that will all come into this work as well. I've also just been like a perpetually burned out woman who really wants to make an impact in the world and has really struggled with that feeling of like, here is this big vision that I have, and like I feel so limited by the capacity of my body. Like, why does my body keep burning out? Like, I want to make this big thing happen. And so there's really been a tension that I felt in my career between my physical body and the limits of that, and this vision that I have for the impact that I want to make in the world. And so that always felt at odds until I started doing this work around cycles and realized that there are very different ways that we can approach creating an impact that don't deplete us, but can actually generate energy. And that might also actually get us more of where we actually want to go, that feel like much more aligned with the vision that we have when we really are trying to create a future where people of all genders are thriving and supported, but also a planet that is healthy and thriving too. And so that's where my studies of nature and the body have really been shaping that. And we're going to be pulling that in here as well for us to explore. So I feel increasingly passionate that we can't have a regenerative, just future without women and gender diverse people at the table. There's a lot of research that supports that says, if we want effective solutions that are going to work for everyone in response to the climate crisis and all these overlapping crises, we need diverse people at the table. And so there's that truth that I've been really sitting with. And I'm like, I am looking around to all of my peers and colleagues in the impact spaces, and I'm seeing women and gender diverse people burning out and drawing back. And it's like, okay, wait a second. If we're all collectively experiencing this burnout and stepping back, who's left building this future? And that's a really big, like, existential question I have for myself, but it's something that I think that we really need to start thinking about is like, what kind of leaders do we need in this moment? And what are those practices and models that we need to start drawing on that are different from the ways that we've been taught so that we can continue this work that we feel so drawn to and so passionate about, but in ways that support our well-being, in ways that bring us joy, in ways that bring us connection and belonging. And because that's also how we're actually going to get to that outcome of a future where people of all genders can thrive. Yeah. And so it's like, we need us. We need us, and it's really hard. And so what I have been sensing, particularly the more that I do this cycle awareness work, is that we need these tools and practices that are more aligned with our visions. So the things that have made us successful in the workplace, the tools and the practices and the ways of being a leader that we've been taught are often the ways that got us into this mess, right? I even found, like, for myself, when after I left corporate and I started my own business, I'm going through all these, practices of things that worked for me before in a corporate space and realizing like how much I had internalized patriarchal norms and capitalist norms and was just recreating it on myself and my own business, even though I'd been trying to escape that. Yeah. And so it's like, we are being like, we have these big visions for something different, but we're using the same tools that got us into the mess to try to get us out. So what are these different tools? What is the opportunity for us as leaders in this moment? Like, what kind of leaders do we want to be? How do we want to show up? And that is really where this program is coming from, is this desire to bring women and gender diverse people together for us to start to explore that together, but also to share some of these tools and practices that I picked up along the way that I think can serve as our guide. All right. So in terms of my intentions for this program, really, as I was just talking about, it's like I want to bring us together to sense together what are the leadership practices and skills that could help us at this time, that could help us be thriving, adaptive, resilient leaders. And we're going to be doing that through guided conversation, as well as these resources that I'll share to hopefully spark some ideas. We're also going to be engaging in self-inquiry, like exploring, like, how do I personally want to show up as a leader? Like, what's my journey? What's my role? And how might my definition of leadership need to shift? And so that's where you can really bring in any questions that you might be having about your own leadership or role in this moment on our planet. And so that's where we're bringing in some of the cycle awareness practices. And then the other intention is really to experience what different ways of leadership could look and feel like. And so that is where, as we come into this circle structure together, we're going to be experimenting with that. So rather than there being traditional hierarchies, we're each going to have different roles that we'll be playing. Yeah, just experiencing that co-creative energy that comes from being in a circle. So it's really about using cycle awareness as a tool in support of uncovering and reimagining what is leadership, and what are the practices that are needed for us to actually make change at this time on our planet. So this program is for women and non-binary leaders who are actively wanting to play a part in world building. When I say the word leader, I truly mean everyone. You are already a leader, whether you believe it or not, whether you identify with it or not. It's not about necessarily being in charge of other people. In fact, I think that's a definition we need to move away from. But instead, it's about sharing our unique gifts in ways that bring us joy, showing up with presence, and really being intentional about how we're engaging in our communities and in our work. All right. So what are some things that you might expect from the program? What might you experience by the end of it? So as I mentioned, there's always the magic and the unknown that comes from bringing together humans in a co-creative space. But what I do think that you will leave with is, first of all, just a new expanded definition of leadership that really feels like it's rooted in yourself, in your own wisdom, and also in the natural world. You will have new tools and leadership models to guide your work, and some fun new connections, because this will be a small group. We'll get to know each other quite well. And my hope is also that just the experience of being in this program just feels like a really beautiful, supportive space to hold you wherever you are in these questions that I'm talking about. So it might just be that it just feels really good. And that if that's the only thing you walk away with, then I am happy with that. Okay, so let's talk about like what the actual experience will feel like and where is that beauty going to be found. Especially because this is, we're talking about launching this in summer, but also because of the realities of life. It feels really important to me that this program feels spacious, that there is no urgency around it, that there doesn't feel like there's a ton of homework, but that it really is just giving you like space and like room to breathe, that it's holding space for you to ask questions and explore questions you're probably already asking, but haven't had the time or resources to actually explore. So we're going to be using a cycle, a rhythm to actually help with that. And so in terms of what the actual flow of the experience will be, is we will kick off with an opening session. I'll be doing some teaching on that call to actually help us understand what is the circle structure that we're going to be working with, what are the norms that we're going to be using to guide us, so that we're all on the same page. I'll also be teaching the cycle awareness tool I'll talk about in a second. And that is going to be the teaching moment, right? It's really about just helping set up the container so that everyone feels safe, welcome, and connected and resourced to fully participate. And then we start to move into this little rhythm that we'll be using. So I'll be sharing the following week after the opening session. You'll get some resources to explore, as well as some of the questions that we'll be using in the following week in our circle gathering. I am an introvert. I know that there are a lot of introverts who are attracted to this work, and I like to make sure that everyone feels like if they're someone who needs to prepare some thoughts and do some deep thinking solo first, that you're able to do that, but it's not required. It's like if that feels good to dig in and have reflection time before, great. If not, come to the conversation and share whatever is feeling present for you at that time. So we'll have that week where you have to dig into that inspiration, prepare any thoughts if that feels good. We'll gather for our circle together, which is a 90-minute call. And then you'll have the following week to rest, integrate, have a week off. And then we'll do that 2 more times. A week where you have to like read an article or watch a short video and just like spend some time with those resources and the topic. We'll come together as a circle to really explore it together, and then you'll have a week off. And so there are 3 circles, so 3 of those little cycles that we'll do. And then there will be a really beautiful closing session at the end, which will be an hour, where we'll digest and integrate and celebrate together, so that there's really a sense of closing that container at the end. Okay, and the other thing I just want to say is, in terms of these components, I've been really discerning with what I'm including, because I really do want it to feel spacious. But because this is a small group, we can also be really responsive as needs arise in the group. So if there are other things that the group is needing, I might bring in other tools or resources, or more support. But the intention is really to make it feel very spacious. So we're really focusing on these essentials. Okay, so let's see. We have a few minutes left, and I want to make sure that I talk about the circle itself and then the cycle awareness practice. Okay, so in terms of the circle, the lineage that I'm drawing from is the Circle Way. Some of you might be familiar with that book. There's also really beautiful free resources on their website. Circle Way is a structure and a practice that we used a lot at Eileen Fisher, and I was mentored in by my colleague Alex Sukier. Shout out to Alex. And so this is a way of gathering in circles so that we feel safe in sharing big ideas and knowing that each person is going to get their time to talk. So there are certain roles that people will be able to volunteer for to sort of hold the circle together. And there will also be these sort of small practices or norms, I guess, that we will be using to make sure that we're engaging in a way where everyone feels like they have time to speak and really be listened to. So that is what's going to really guide our circle conversations, and I'll teach more about that on the opening call. In terms of the cycle awareness practice, this is meant to be complementary. So we're coming together as a group in the circle and going through these experiences together. But I wanted to make sure to hold time for people to also feel supported in their own experience as well, right? Because we're learning these things together, surfacing all this stuff, and then it's like, okay, but like, how does this relate to me? And for that, we'll be using a really simple weekly cycle awareness practice, which again, I'll teach on the opening call, but you can expect it'll be about like 10 minutes a week of just reflection time, of taking these questions or these intentions that you might be carrying around your leadership and really carrying it through a cycle and seeing what insights and new perspectives that you discover. Super simple. You do not need a period. There's some really fun ways to engage with cycles on this, whether you want that to be with a menstrual cycle or with the moon cycles. But it's very simple and there's no need to have a menstrual cycle at present to really benefit from that. Some of the other lineages that I'm drawing from here, just because it was a question that I did receive, is, one of my teachers is Tara Moore. She wrote a wonderful book called Playing Big, which I highly recommend. And that really informs a lot of my facilitation style, but also the space that I like to hold for people. Emergent strategy, always and forever, and really seeing ourselves mirrored in nature and this sort of co-creative future building that we're going to do together. I also think that part of that, there's some overlap there with biomimicry, which is really drawn into this work too. Work that reconnects really informs both this like idea of like, how do we actually like explore these big feelings and emotions and ideas that are being pulled up at this time on our planet, and how do we find our place? And then there's all the cycle awareness work, obviously, that I've been building over several years. That is a core part of this. So that is a little walk through the experience. It's really 5 live calls, a simple cycle awareness practice that you'll be doing throughout. And then the group will have the option to have a group chat through the program if that feels supportive. Okay, we're just at time. And so I have 1 or 2 more minutes of just sharing that I'm going to share around next steps. No pressure to stay if you need to hop off. And then if there's any other questions, I can answer that too. Okay, so in terms of next steps, this group will be between 4 and 8 people total. The max number is 8 people. And just like a dinner party, when you're coming together as a small group, it kind of is shaped by the group. So it's really my intention that this group, the program feels really responsive to the needs of the people who show up and want to be involved. So that is why I'm letting the group decide what our start date is. So are we going to start in June? Or are we going to start in July? As well as set the specific dates and times for our live calls. And part of that is also just because the live calls are so important that you're going to want to join the calls live if you can. Like maybe miss one, but really the intention is that we're all going to be there together for those live calls to the best of our ability. Next steps, I'm going to be sending this replay along with just a little check-in tomorrow. Once I have 3 or 4 people who have said yes, I will open registration. And then any spots that haven't been claimed yet will become open to the public. This is really different from how I usually share things. I'm usually like, okay, like here's the program and here are the specific dates and here's the sign up. But that's not how this program wants to happen. I have been feeling like, actually, I was like describing it to my husband as like, I feel like it's this like underground thing where I'm just like, oh, I'm doing this like cool thing. And like, do people want to do this with me? it just feels like that's the energy that this program wants to have. And so if it's been sort of funny where you're just like, it feels like this thing is kind of like, shape shifty, and where do I just like sign up? That is why I'm letting it be shape shifty intentionally, because I really want to let the group who wants to show up for this show up, and then let that be our cue to move forward. So that is that. You'll get an email soon with the next steps. And like, please reach out if you have questions or any concerns, or you just want to talk more about this. But this is feeling just like such a gift to be able to share. It is a gift to always teach. I love teaching menstrual cycle workshops. I love bringing people together and sharing what I've learned, but it is a really huge honor to be able to hold a circle for people. And so I don't take that lightly, and really want to be intentional about how we come together. Yeah, and see what is it? What is it that we're being called for at this time on our planet? What kind of leaders do we want to become? All right, so I'm going to end the recording here, if I can. Okay, there we go.